My own brother, can you believe it? Set me up for a crime. He let me rot for 20 years, and then out of the blue, he asks me for 10 grand over dinner with my wife. I never saw it coming. It was supposed to be a nice, relaxed family dinner, you know? Warm, cozy, the usual Sunday get-together. Then, bam, it was like watching a car wreck in slow motion. You can't tear your eyes away. It was Sunday, and my parents are creatures of habit. Mom had made her famous pot roast, and Dad was already on his second bourbon before I even got my coat off. Usually, the smell of roast beef and carrots calms me down, but that night, it made my stomach churn. Kane, my wife, gave me that look, the one that says, "Just get through this and we can leave after dessert." We'd been through this a million times before. Just sit, smile, and put up with Derek. But this time was different. Derek was late, like always. He had his hair slicked back, trying to look like he was 23 again, even though it was a million degrees outside. I was still wearing my leather jacket. He strolled in with that same cocky grin, like he was the star of his own movie, and we were all just background players. He kissed Mom, slapped Dad on the back like they were buddies at the bar instead of father and son, and gave Kane a wink that made my blood run cold. I didn't say a word. What's the point? I never do anything right anyway. I figured I'd let him exhaust himself first. Dinner started okay, I guess. We made small talk, the kind families do when they're too scared to be real with each other. Mom asked about Kane's job, Dad griped about gas prices, and Derek was being Derek. I can't remember a single story from him about some project in Austin or Denver. It was something about real estate and NFTs, just a bunch of nonsense words that sounded cool to people who stopped keeping up with stuff back in, like, 2007. Kane gave me this look from across the table, silently begging me not to bust out laughing. And then, bam. Derek leaned back, dabbed his mouth with a napkin, and just tossed it down like it was nothing. "Hey, Mark," he said, all casual, like he was asking to borrow a lighter. "Listen, I gotta talk to you about something. It's kinda important." I knew exactly where this was going. I'd heard that voice before, that mix of fake modesty and entitlement. "I need 10 grand, he announced, just like that. 10,000 bucks, like it was nothing at all. He said it without even looking at anyone. "It's just me," like it was a done deal. Kane stopped chewing. Mom stared into her mashed potatoes like they could somehow magically make this all disappear. Dad's jaw moved just once, but he kept quiet. That was his go-to move. Act like silence made you wise. It doesn't. I set down my fork, not because I was shocked, but because I wanted him to know I was done with him. "No," I said, just one word, no hesitation. Derek blinked like it hadn't even crossed his mind I'd say no. "What?" He just laughed like I was kidding. "Dude, it's only 10 grand, he said. But it wasn't just any 10 grand, you know, and no way was I giving it to him. This heavy silence fell over us, thick as a brick wall. Kane slipped her hand onto my knee under the table like she sensed trouble brewing. Derek leaned in, the smile wiped clean off his face. His voice got all loud and intense. "You owe me, man, you owe me." He slammed his fist on the table, making my mom jump. "You think I forgot what I did for you in college?" I didn't say a word. I just sat there, frozen. But then the whole mood shifted. It was like the room couldn't handle the weight of what he'd just said. Kane turned to me, her grip on my leg tightening. My parents were stone still, like someone hit pause on a movie. You could see the gears turning in their heads. Derek kept right on going. "You remember that night? That party? I covered for you. I saved your butt. You'd be in jail if it weren't for me." That's when I looked him dead in the eye and said, real calm and steady like a church bell on a cold day, "Okay, let's talk about what you really covered up." It was like watching someone's soul try to get back into their body. Derek's mouth just flapped open and shut, open and shut. He looked at my mom, Dad, and Kane. Too late. The words were out there. Everyone heard him. Everyone saw the mask slip. My mom went completely white. My dad's hands were balled up into fists, the knuckles bone white. Kane let go of my hand and let go of me. I didn't budge. Honestly, I'd been anticipating this for like 20 years. Every single birthday, every single holiday, every time Derek acted like he was the family's savior, I'd bite my lips so hard I'd almost draw blood. I held on to that night like a secret, knowing it would eventually need to come out. So yeah, Derek wanted to open the door. Whatever. He ended up kicking it down. Now we're all stepping through it, and I'm through pretending I don't remember what went down that night. "Everyone just heard what you said, Derek," I said, my voice solid like I'd rehearsed it a million times. "I'm done covering for you. I think I was maybe 19 or 21 back then. Honestly, time gets fuzzy. Oh wait, I think it was my senior year. Yeah, I was 22. The math is probably off, but I've never been able to trust my memory when it comes to that night. It wasn't like a memory at all. More like a terrible photo, washed out in places and missing all the important stuff. All I knew for sure was that I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache, blood on my hands, and a campus security officer banging on my dorm room door like he was delivering bad news. The party was supposed to be wild, a classic end-of-semester mess with cheap drinks, loud music, and even louder regrets. I ended up at Delta because someone swore their jungle juice could wipe your memory clean. Honestly, that sounded perfect. I needed to forget. My classes were all right, but my life was a big all snooze. My girlfriend had just texted me, "It's over," and I was too chicken to admit I was already missing her. So I went, drank way too much, danced like an idiot, yelled a lot, and passed out. It wasn't the first time and definitely not the last, but it was the only time I woke up with everyone giving me these serious looks like I'd committed a crime. Derek wasn't even supposed to be there. He was still a high school kid then, a total rebel with a fake ID and a mile-wide rebellious streak. He thought college was some kind of awesome film and would sneak up to see me, acting like he had important stuff going on. I'd sometimes let him sleep on the floor. I didn't really think much of it until that night when I realized he was at the party too. He showed up while I was on my third cup of that mystery barrel drink and vanished into the crowd like he ran the place. The next morning was just weird. I couldn't remember a thing, but everyone was giving me these glances like I'd burned the place down. I kept hearing whispers, "That guy, are they serious?" No one would tell me straight up what was going on, just these weird looks and vague accusations. Then the campus cops showed up saying there had been a complaint from a girl. The paperwork didn't have her name on it, but they mentioned something happened up on the second floor after midnight. My name was in there, though. People saw me there, my blood was totally loaded with booze, and I couldn't remember a thing. That's when Derek swooped in. He pulled me away from the office, eyes huge and his voice quiet, and told me, "Don't say a word, don't admit to anything. I got this." That part's crystal clear in my head. "I'll handle it," he said like he was some kind of hero, stepping in to clean up my mess. He said he'd talk to someone, maybe her or someone else. It was all a blur, and by the next day it was like it never even happened. The whole thing was dropped. No charges, nothing. The school practically forced me to take a semester off. My parents were pissed, but also relieved. Nobody asked too many questions, and Derek. He acted like he'd won a medal. Later, when I asked him about it, he just laughed and said, "You owe me, man, big time." I figured he'd smoothed things over somehow. Maybe he'd convinced her it wasn't a big deal. Maybe I'd done something and I just didn't want to know. And that was the worst part. I didn't want to know. I just let the shame wash over me. I let it settle. And I built my whole life around avoiding it. I told myself I was lucky. I told myself he saved me. I told myself all kinds of stuff. After what he said at the dinner table and seeing him wield that secret like a threat, I just started to see things differently. I started to wonder whose fault it all really was. I began to investigate. I went through some old files my dad had stashed away in the attic. He kept everything. Letters, notes, even some of my old school stuff. A yellow envelope had a letter from the school from April 2003. It wasn't for me. It was addressed to my dad. The dean mentioned a problem involving both sons. Both sons? I read that part again. It didn't add up. I was the one who was supposed to be going there. Derek wasn't even a factor, so why would they bring him up? I started emailing and calling around. I tracked down an old classmate who was at the party. He didn't remember much, but he did remember Derek getting into it with someone near the stairs. He said Derek was trying to get a girl's attention, but she got upset. She looked like she was trying to get away. My hands were shaking as I typed the name into my computer. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. A lead, a post, anything. And then I found it. The blog. A little site with a few old articles and a picture that just hit me hard. It was her. I didn't know her name back then. Now I do. Emily Cartwright. She remembers everything. It took her 3 days to get back to me after I emailed her. Emily Cartwright, the girl from that night. It had been 20 years, but her face was still there in the back of my head, a ghost I couldn't bring myself to even think about. When her message popped up, I felt like I was about to touch a live wire opening it. Part of me expected anger, confusion, or just nothing, but it was just one line. "If you really want to talk, I'm ready." We met at this run-down coffee shop outside of town, the kind with peeling paint and crappy music playing just loud enough to make sure you couldn't hear yourself think. She came in wearing a long gray coat and a scarf, even though it wasn't cold at all. She knew me instantly, and I could tell even after all this time. She had this tight smile like she was saying, "I'm here, but don't think this means anything's okay." I mumbled a thank you for coming, but it felt hollow even as I said it. We sat there, staring at each other, two strangers connected by this awful thing that happened. I had no clue where to even start. She broke the silence. "You don't remember anything, do you?" she asked, stirring her tea. It was just hot water, no sugar, no milk, nothing. I shook my head, the shame flooding back. "Just bits and pieces," I said. "Noise, a staircase, my brother said he'd take care of it." She nodded and looked away for a second, then she spoke again, softer this time. I wasn't even supposed to be there, she said. My roommate dragged me out, said we needed a night out before finals. She gave this little laugh, but it was empty, bitter. You were completely wasted when I got there, totally hammered and all over the place. I thought seriously someone should have stopped serving you a long time ago. I just stayed quiet. After all that time, I still couldn't fight it. I went upstairs to the bathroom. She started, her voice steady now, like she'd rehearsed this whole thing in front of a mirror before coming. He followed me. Not you, him, Derek. He trapped me on the landing. He reeked of weed and beer. He tried to act all friendly like he knew me. I didn't even know his name. I said no. He didn't like that one bit. He tried to, force himself on me, hands on my waist, his face too close. My hands were balled up under the table, nails digging into my palms. I pushed him away. She just kept going, not showing any emotion. Then he stumbled, hit the wall, and started yelling at me, calling me. I ran back downstairs. He told a friend. She told campus security. And the next day, everything went insane. They said it was you. They said people saw you up there, that you were drunk and acting out, that you got aggressive. She was looking right at me then, her eyes dark and hard. I didn't really see your face that night, but I remember your voice, and it wasn't you. I tried to tell them what really happened, but someone, your dad, I think, called me. He told me you were being sent home, that you were getting help. He said the person who hurt me wasn't there anymore and promised it wouldn't happen again. He offered to pay for the therapy, but I was just done, scared too. I didn't say anything, and that was it. A cold, heavy feeling settled in my chest. I didn't realize that was me. He said I was gone. I asked again. She just shook her head. He said you were leaving, and the real one, the one that was me, was taken care of, so I didn't report him. I wanted to scream, to bawl, to hit something. I wanted to go back 2 decades and throw Derek down the stairs myself. But instead, I just sat there and I whispered, he lied to you. She didn't say anything right away. She just stared at me like she saw the whole thing and thought it was awful. After we said goodbye, I drove home in silence. No music, no talking, just the sound of the car and a million thoughts going through my head. Derek used me as a shield, with Dad's help. I stopped at a gas station on the way home, not for gas, but because I needed to breathe. I stood there in the parking lot, hands on my knees, thinking about how many times I had thanked Derek for saving me. When I got home, I got an old lockbox out of the attic. Inside were tax forms, birth certificates, and a bunch of envelopes with dates on them. One caught my eye, April 2003. Inside, a copy of the check Dad wrote to Derek for $8,000. It said spring tuition in the memo line, except Derek wasn't in school. He never even applied that year. That money wasn't for school. It was quiet. I just sat there staring at it until it got dark. When Kane found me on the floor and asked what the heck was wrong, I couldn't even answer her. Not then. I kept looking at that check like it was some gruesome picture. You lied, Derek, just to save your own skin. I carried that guilt around for 20 years. Now it's your turn. The turkey was like sawdust, the wine tasted like syrup, and the whole house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something bad to happen. Thanksgiving at my folks' place is usually pretty awkward, all fake smiles and pretending, but this year it was different. It felt heavy, like the walls themselves knew something was about to go down. I hadn't said a word to Derek since that blow-up 3 weeks earlier, and the silence between us was so thick you could cut it with a knife. He still showed up, though, walking and all cocky and grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. He gave my mom a bottle of booze that always smooths things over with her. I gave my dad a pat on the back, pretending like everything was normal between us two. Then Derek sat across from me, smirking like he still had me under his thumb. He didn't. I'd spent the last 3 weeks digging through memories I'd been trying to bury for years. I even talked to people I hadn't spoken to since we were in college. I went through bank records, disciplinary reports, anything that could prove what I already knew deep down, but I wasn't there to wave papers around. I was there to destroy him in front of everybody, and I was going to do it in the only way he understood, by taking away his control. I knew Derek inside and out. I knew exactly how to manipulate him, and tonight I was gonna play him like a fiddle. Dinner was tense right from the start. My mom tried to act normal, passing the dishes like she wasn't falling apart inside. Dad barely said a word, just focused on carving the turkey like it was some kind of puzzle he could solve with a knife. Kane sat beside me, quiet but definitely on edge, just moving her food around on her plate. Derek tried to break the tension with little comments and jokes that nobody laughed at, acting like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't completely shattered our family's fragile peace with one little sentence and a smug look. He figured if he pretended everything was okay, it magically would be. That was his go-to move. Rewrite history loud enough and people forget what really went down. I waited for dessert. That's when everyone lets their guard down a little. That's when they start to think maybe they've made it through another holiday without a total meltdown. Mom was bringing out the pumpkin pie when I cleared my throat and said, "Derek, remember that night back in college when you covered for me?" The whole room went still. Forks stopped mid-air. My mom's hands shook a little and the pie wobbled on the plate. Derek looked up from his coffee with those big, innocent eyes he'd perfected over the years. "Oh man, are we really going there again?" he said with a nervous little laugh that sounded fake. "Water under the bridge, isn't it?" "Yeah," I said, all casual, like I was just strolling down memory lane. "So yeah, I've been thinking about it, trying to piece it all together. Crazy, huh, how it all went down." He kinda squinted like he smelled a rat but wasn't sure yet. He says, all casual, leaning back like he was giving me a life lesson, "You were smashed, you don't remember anything, that's why I stepped in." I leaned in, keeping my voice calm. "That's the thing," I said, "I didn't remember until recently." His jaw clenched just a little, but I saw it. I kept talking, nice and slow. I talked to Emily and Derek. His coffee cup just stopped in midair, then clattered back down. Turns out she has a blog, and I reached out to her. She wrote back, "I remember everything." The stares, the jacket, the voice that wasn't mine. My dad looked up, really looked up, like he was seeing something for the first time. Mom was staring at her lap like if she didn't move, she'd vanish. Derek's voice got quieter. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," I said. "I know you showed up uninvited. I know you followed her upstairs, and I know Dad paid you off, called it tuition. Want to see the check?" Derek's face went bright red. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again, stammering, words all jumbled up like loose change. "You were drunk," he snapped. "No one would have believed you over me." And there it was, the crack, the slip, the confession. Mom gasped, quiet as could be. Dad stood up, his face was so pale like I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger exactly, more like a deep disgust. Kane just looked at Derek like he was some creep who'd wandered in and peed on the carpet. "You son of a bitch," Dad choked out, his voice all shaky. "We protected the wrong kid." Derek tried to wiggle out of it, his eyes wide. "Of course you knew what could have happened to him," he stammered. "I didn't hurt her, nothing happened." "But you tried," I shot back, "and you made me carry the weight of it." Mom started crying, her hands shaking so bad the pie went splat on the floor. Nobody even bothered to pick it up. Derek looked around like he was searching for a secret exit, a way to disappear. And me? I sat there, as cool as a cucumber, watching the whole house of cards he'd built come crashing down. He jumped up, yanking his chair back. "Do you think you're better than me?" he yelled, but his voice cracked. "No," I said, standing up and meeting his gaze. "I just finally stopped pretending I wasn't." Then this heavy silence fell, like right before a storm hits, everything felt weird and wrong. Derek stomped out without another word. Dad followed him, not to stop him, but just to make sure he left. Mom just sobbed. Kane didn't say anything until we were driving home. Then she just asked, "Are you feeling better now?" I didn't answer right away. I stared out at the empty road, the headlights cutting through the dark like a knife through guilt. I don't know, I finally blurted out. I guess I just felt done, but I wasn't. Not really, because that whole revenge thing, it's a quick high, maybe 5 minutes of feeling good. Then it's just bitter like ashes in your mouth, Derek. You messed up your own life. I just lit the match. After Thanksgiving, it felt like winter hit early. Not the weather, but everything between us just froze over. Derek didn't text, didn't call, nothing. Not even one of his pathetic apologies, the kind he used to throw around like party favors. When he was backed into a corner, poof, he disappeared. Like telling the truth made him vanish from the family. Maybe it did, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt empty, this silence, like a vacuum that could cut you. My dad didn't talk to me for 5 whole days after that dinner. Then a letter showed up, old-fashioned, postmarked from some cabin 2 towns over where he'd gone to hide. He didn't sign it "Love, Dad," or anything sweet. Just his name, scribbled at the bottom like he was signing a quit notice. It was short, just a page, and every sentence felt like he'd chewed it over 100 times before writing it down. He said he knew. Knew since that morning back in '03 when Derek came home, all freaked out, saying I was involved in something awful and begging Dad to handle it easy. He told me he'd chatted with a pal on the school board, someone who owed him one. He said he'd pulled some strings, shut some people up, and basically talked himself into thinking it was all to keep the family from falling apart. Then he fessed up to something else. Deep down, he always knew it wasn't me. The timing was off, and my rough morning after. It was from confusion, not guilt. He said he convinced himself it didn't matter, that I'd bounce back, go on to do something good with my life, which I guess I did. And Derek, he said Derek was already a wreck, and maybe he didn't want to break him more. "I chose the son I thought could handle it," his letter read. I never asked if he should. I stared at that line forever, it felt like, because underneath it was something I didn't want to face. The only reason the truth stayed buried for so long was that I could handle it. I could swallow it, hide it away, and act like everything was fine, maybe even becoming the person everyone thought I was. Mom never brought it up again, not out loud anyway. She went back to humming in the kitchen and folding laundry like nothing ever happened. I saw that she kept the guest room door closed all the time. She set 4 plates at the table, even though it was just the 3 of us. She asked how Derek was, but only once, and so quietly it barely registered as a question. Kane, she was a different story. One night while we were getting ready for bed, she got me. Her eyes in the mirror got this intense look like she was staring right through me. "I'm proud of you," she mumbled, still with foam on her mouth. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I honestly didn't know what to say. I told her the truth, or at least what I could say, that I didn't know how to bring it up, that I thought it would mess everything up, that I had convinced myself it was over. But more than that, I told her I didn't want her to see me any differently, and I think that really got to her. The next week, I tried to go back to how things were before. But you know, when things are broken, they don't just magically fix themselves. They just try to act like they're okay. I worked, I cooked, I walked the dog, I even mowed the lawn like maybe the blades could somehow cut through the weight in my heart. But the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt like I was holding my breath for too long, just waiting to breathe again. So I went to see Emily again. Not to say sorry, although maybe I should have, but because I wanted to see what it looked like when someone else made it through the same mess. She was sure this time. We sat in the same coffee shop in the same seats, but the silence between us was different. Not heavy, just real. "He left town," she said, sipping her tea. "Derek," "I think so," I said. "Nobody knows where and nobody cares enough to look." She just nodded, a blank expression on her face. Yeah, that figured. I almost asked if she was okay, but I didn't. It would have been all about me, you know? After a long beat, I finally asked, "Does it help knowing it wasn't forgotten?" She looked at me for a sec, then said something I'll probably remember forever. She said, "I don't think it matters anymore." Closure. It's just a fancy word for trying to pretty up something awful, that's what I think. I nodded, and we sat there for a bit longer. Right before I left, as I was getting my coat, she hit me with the question I'd been dreading ever since I found out who she was. "Why did you wait 20 years to say something?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. No answer would have made me look good, either a chicken or a liar or both. I just nodded again. That question felt like a ton of bricks on my chest as I walked out into the freezing air. On the drive home, I thought about all the unspoken things between us, all the stuff we keep buried because we think silence means we're being merciful, brave, or smart. Maybe quiet is just fear in a nice suit. Maybe the real sin isn't what we do, but what we refuse to name. Sometimes you gotta stay quiet to survive, that's for sure. But sometimes it's just plain old cowardice. I remember it like it was yesterday. Growing up, my family wasn't exactly picture perfect. My parents fought a lot, and it always felt like I was stuck in the middle. I was a shy kid, and I didn't have many friends. I spent most of my time alone, lost in books or just daydreaming. School wasn't easy either. I struggled to keep up, and I was often picked on by other kids. They'd make fun of my clothes, my hair, everything. It made me feel so worthless. Then when I was 15, things got even worse. My parents decided to get a divorce. I was devastated. I felt like my world was falling apart. I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. I started acting out, getting into trouble at school, and staying out late. I was angry and confused, and I just wanted to lash out at the world. Eventually, my mom and I moved into a small apartment. It was a struggle for her, but she always tried to make sure I had everything I needed. I started to see how hard she was working and how much she was sacrificing for me. It made me realize I needed to change my attitude. I started to focus on school and tried to make some new friends. It wasn't easy, but slowly, things started to get better. I learned to accept myself for who I was, flaws and all. I realized that I was stronger than I thought. It took a long time, but I eventually started to heal. The scars are still there, but they don't hurt as much anymore.